Hello, and welcome to Well Written Stories. I am your host, Eric Oriana. Please be sure to hit the like and subscribe buttons down below. This show is about putting a spotlight on well-written stories, whether they are novels, novellas, short stories, movies, or TV shows. The format of the show is as follows. I will talk a little bit about the author or authors of a work, give some background as to the genesis of that work, a brief review about why I think the work is worth your time, and the bulk of the show will be an in-depth review that will be very spoiler heavy, so be forewarned about that. On this first episode of the show, I'm talking about Leviathan's Wake, which is the first novel in the Expanse series by James S. A. Corey, which is the pen name for Ty Frick and Daniel Abrams. They are a fantastic co-writing team. The Expanse novels are some of the best science fiction I've read in a really long time. I can't recommend the novels and the novellas, and I highly recommend the Expanse TV show that is now on Amazon Prime Video. Both writers are producers on the show, so they are definitely involved in telling their story yet again in a different format. The book Leviathan's Wake again is the first novel in the series, and it sets the groundwork for all the things that happen later in the series. Basically, if you're looking for a good story set in the future about what happens to humanity 300, 400 years from now, and what it is that humanity ends up doing once it has begun to colonize the rest of the solar system, this is the thing to read. The novel has amazing characters. It is incredibly well plotted, and it has a really good method of exploring ideas that are engaging, that are interesting, and more than anything, human. Both Ty and Daniel are really good writers when it comes to having you feel what people are going through as they go through the events of the novel. I can't recommend the book enough. It is not a perfect book. I want to be clear on that. There are several things in this first novel that do get better as the series goes on. As I think both Ty and Daniel get better at understanding these characters that we meet and what ends up happening. So real briefly, the book is a series of chapters alternating between two main characters, James Holden and Josephus Miller. And so having the novel bounce back between these two men is a very good way of introducing us to the setting of where the story takes place. There's intrigue, there's conspiracy, there's interpersonal drama, which again is the heart of any story. That there is conflicts going on. And again, I just can't sing enough praises to how good this book is, how much this entire series is worth your time. So go read the book. It's been compared to Game of Thrones in space. Ty Frick, one of the authors, used to be an assistant to George R.R. Martin. The book has won, this book, Leviathan's Wake, has won the Hugo Nebula Award for science fiction. Okay, let's get to it. One of the core questions of serialized novels is whether or not the one novel in the story, of the greater story that is being constructed, is it strong enough to be by itself? This is a question we will come back to in the future, because it is important to think about how well constructed something is. A story needs to be self-contained enough that reading the first novel, reading the middle novel, reading the fifth novel or the 15th novel in the series, that reading just one of those, reading any one of those novels can stand alone without having read the entire opus. Because if it doesn't do that, then the overall assessment gets hurt. Because if the only way to understand the story is to read everything, then that hurts all the pieces. And so this is a very delicate balance writers who construct novelization series have to contend with. Because if there's no way for me to enjoy subsequent novels unless I read the prior ones, then I'm obligated to read everything. And if that's the case, then you're not really telling me a story in novel form. You just have one giant novel that you've broken up into pieces. And that is a different sort of work. It's a different sort of craft, I would argue. Leviathan's Wake is a really good book. I've enjoyed it immensely. And as I said prior in my little review before, it is not perfect. The main thing that I don't like about the book, and I want to start off on this, is that Josephus Miller, who is a private detective on a space station called, on an asteroid called Ceres, falls in love with someone that he has been charged with finding. And this phenomena, this trope of having the detective fall in love with a woman he's been charged with finding or rescuing is a very tired trope. It doesn't do anybody any good, in the sense that it usually makes the male detective a rather creepy personality, and it objectifies the woman who is the object of the detective, right? Even by using those terms, we see that the woman is no longer a person, the woman is an object. And in this case, that woman is Julie Mao. And in subsequent novels, we will see this technique that Ty and Daniel use of using different character perspectives to tell the story. We will have multiple characters of different backgrounds, whether gender or ethnicity or even sexual orientation, different political factions, and they begin to texture and enrich the world that they introduce us here in Leviathan's Wake. And the world of Leviathan's Wake, the world of the Expanse, in broad terms, is that humanity has broken off into three main groups, three nations: Earth, Mars, and the Belt. Earth has 30 billion people on it. Mars is an independent nation state, planet really. And then there is the asteroid belt. And what has happened is that as humanity has begun to push into the solar system, the old imperialistic political behavior that humanity has always exhibited has just spread out to other planetary locations. The Belters are the underdogs in the story. They are humans who are the descendants of the first wave of colonized people that explored beyond Mars. And at this point in the story of humanity, there are human settlements all the way out to Titania, which is a moon of Uranus. And people are out there. People are mining stuff. They're mining water, they're mining material, and they are being exploited. And they are being exploited by the Earth-Mars coalition, which is, as the name suggests, Earth and Mars. And there is hostility between all three groups. The Earth-Mars alliance is not a unified front. They are allies. And the Belt, the people out, a lot of people who live in the outer planets, in the outer colonies, settlements, do not like Earth and Mars at all, because it is Earth and Mars that taxes them, but does not give them political rights. It is Earth and Mars that they are dependent upon for survival. Space is a pretty harsh place to live. And the Belters, as they've identified themselves, are tired of it. They do not want to be pushed around by powers that are hundreds of millions of miles away. And so this is the world of the Expanse. This is the setting in which the story functions. And this is one of those points that I really want to stress, that the setting of a story matters, because if you can set your story in a different setting, then the setting is irrelevant. Like, this story does not work unless it's taking place where it is. This is not a rehash of European colonialism or other things of that nature. It is similar in that there is colonization, there is imperialism, there is exploitation of a population for both labor and natural resources. However, the shape of how that functions is directly related to the setting of the story, which is the solar system. The distances matter, the conditions matter. You change those things and the story doesn't work as well. It just really doesn't function. This story has to be set where it is. So yes, the novel toggles between chapters from James Holden and Josephus Miller. Now, Holden is your quasi-typical white good guy, I'd say. And again, this is a part of the one of the weaknesses of the novel that later on Ty and Daniel make better, right? Because both Miller and Holden are two white guys, right? And they're the two entrants into the story. And that is just what it is. I wonder if perhaps if they were writing the novel today, they might have introduced a third character's point of view on things. But we have the book that we have, and again, it's a great book, and I strongly recommend it. Go buy it. Go rent it at your library. Definitely go see the show. Because I think the show fixes a lot of the things that don't always work specifically in Leviathan's wake. So James Holden. James Holden is the first officer on a ship called the Canterbury. It's a merchant ship. It is a ship whose job is to, or his function is to go to the moons of Saturn, to the rings of Saturn, get ice from that location, and bring that ice back to the asteroid belt that is between Mars and Jupiter. There are stations, there are asteroids that have settlements, and all those localities, they need water. Water needs to be made into air. It needs to be made in. People need to drink water, and so there is a brisk business of ice haulers, whose whole purpose for existing in this economy is to bring water from Saturn's moons and rings to the belt. And so James Holden is the second officer, is the first officer on the Canterbury, which this is the ship he's on. And on this ship, we meet the rest of the crew that will follow James for the rest of the series. We meet Naomi Nagata, we meet Amos Burton, and we meet Alex Kamal. Naomi is a belter. Amos is a fellow Earther like Jim. and Alex is a Martian. And again, this is one of the subtle things that I really enjoy about the writing of the book is we automatically enter into a into a world where we see that different people from different backgrounds work together out of necessity and aren't necessarily that concerned about anything other than just getting through the day and getting the job done. And it's important to realize how much of the decisions Ty and Daniel make have a really interesting texture to them in regards to who is telling the story. Because both Holden and Miller are people who are working, in the sense that they're not captains of a fancy military vessel. They are not people of means. They are not people of great wealth. They are not people of great status at all. The chapters from Miller's perspective provide a really good view of what it's like to be a belter and what the belters go through. Miller's chapters are very noir-y. They're like, he even sports this hat, this pork pie hat, that everybody makes fun of him for, and it definitely gives his character the feeling of something out of a noir detective novel. And it's interesting to see how Miller has views about the work that he does, that he is a cop on an asteroid station, and he is a private police officer. There's in the novel, he works for a company called Star Helix, and it is a mega corporation that is basically like a Blackwater of the future. And there are different private police companies throughout, not just the asteroid stations and settlements throughout the outer planets. They are also on Earth. And policing in this world is not always strictly a state function, or more appropriately, the members of the police are not members of the state. They are independent. They are contractors. And so it's very interesting to get Miller's perspective on what it's like to be a cop for a company that is viewed by many of the people on series as foreign. And not just foreign, but invading. That Star Helix is not a company of the Belt. It is not a corporation that is there to benefit the Belchers. It is there to benefit people very far away on Earth. And having Miller's take on what it's like for him, who is a Belter, who was born out on Ceres, grew up there, became a cop, started working, started to enforce the laws of basically an occupying power. There's a lot of subtlety in the writing that I really enjoy, and the complexity of the situation that Miller finds himself in. Eventually there's a war between everyone, between the Belt and Mars and Earth. They're the largest war in human history at this point begins in this novel. It will not be the last great war set in this series, but it is the first. There are two main dominoes, I would say, that start off the real plot of Leviathan's Wake. One is that the Canterbury finds itself answering a distress call that turns out to be a decoy, which results in the Canterbury being destroyed and Holden, Naomi, Amos, and Alex being its only survivors. And the other is that Miller gets a contract from Star Helix to do what is called a kidnap job. He is tasked with finding Julie Mao, grabbing her, and sending her back to her parents, who are very wealthy people back on Earth. And those two events are directly related. They're tied. And as the novel progresses, as we toggle back between Holden chapters and Miller chapters, we see them moving closer and closer together until both Miller's story and Holden's story end up converging. And then I would argue, the second half of the novel really begins at that point. And that point is when Holden and Miller realize the depth of the conspiracy that's going on that has precipitated the first interplanetary war. Eventually we find out that one of the large Earth corporations has discovered a piece of alien technology that they suspect is a weapon, and they have decided to use the Eros asteroid station as a testing facility for this alien technology, and pretty much instigated a small genocide. Eventually what happens is that the Eros station becomes overrun with the alien technology, and it begins to hurtle itself to Earth to complete some unknown mission that at this point in the novel, at this point in the story, nobody knows what it's doing. It's just this big asteroid that it seems has taken on some sort of sentience and is gunning for Earth. Eventually, Miller sacrifices himself to avoid Eros impacting Earth. It ends up crashing into Venus, and Holden and the rest of his crew are left figuring out how to go on, how to survive in this new destabilized solar system that has been a result of not just the conspiracy behind the alien tech, but some of the decisions that Holden himself has made that have precipitated conflict. And again, the novel is amazing. It's really well written. It is, yes, it is long, but it is really well paced. And again, I just can't recommend it enough. Okay, thanks.